Hello, everyone, and welcome to another session of Biz Review Live, a bi-weekly session where I, Chimdi and I, ideally, Chimdi is not here today, you have only me, but Chimdi and I review data visualization that we have been tagged in, and with the aim of essentially giving feedback to people, helping people to learn, learning from each other, and also inspiring people out there. And yeah, I think we have a couple of visits to go through today. So I'll get right into it. Thanks to people joining us live, but also just a reminder that we do have a YouTube channel. If you want to catch the previous recordings and the previous sessions, definitely search up Visual Live on YouTube and you can see everything there. And without further ado, I'm going to share my screen and we can get started. Can you just give me like a reaction if you see my screen? This- Thank you. All right, so I've just put together a list. Now, the first visualization that we'll be reviewing today is titled What's Powering New US Electricity in 2026? And this is a visualization by Emmanuel. So let me just enlarge that and we can go through it. Okay. Looking at this, I want to say it looks like an infographic style visual, which is nice. I really like the title, a very clear title that asks a very clear question where the new US electricity is coming from in 2026. I think it's very descriptive and very straight to the point. There's some bit of like texture to provide extra context, which is nice. And okay, I also see that there's this kind of, I don't remember what this chart type is called now, but like this parliamentary style chart, and it's color coded by the source of electricity, which I think is like a nice, quick and easy way to just visualize where things are coming from. So I can instantly see that yellow is solar, green is batteries, blue is wind. So that's really nice. I really like the style. I think the white space here is working. I love the simplicity of the view. So basically, you have one main visual, and then you now have like supporting annotations and text around it. I think that this is like very effective. And oh, okay, now I can also see that there's a bit of an interactivity. So when you over on top of each dot, you actually then get to see the trend of the share, which I think is really cool. So for example, here I can see that solar seems to have spiked, particularly in December. I think the analyst in me wants to ask why. And maybe if I read somewhere in the text, maybe there's like explanation around things that happened in like, around that month that can explain it. I hope there is, but if there isn't, I think that's like a thing that I might want to add from an analysis point of view. And also, this is me being pedantic, and this is just me being very, very picky and trying to find like a feedback for this. I think sometimes this chat style does not always work. So imagine if it was like, if the imbalance between the different groups were not like this stack. Say, for example, you have 50% and 48%. It might be hard to instantly tell which one is higher than the other. However, I do feel like it works in this visualization because like it's very obvious that like solar is like half of the electricity and then you have batteries and wind. However, that's just something to keep in mind for any other person like thinking about this chart, thinking about trying to use this chart for their visualization, that you need to also ensure that people have shorter time to insight and ensure that your chart is delivering that as best as possible. But overall, I think this is a very, very, very clean visualization. I don't know what retirement mean. So is it like retirement? Okay, so retirement of the source. So I'm guessing this is a planned retirement for coal and natural gas. Okay, I feel like this part feels a bit like not like an afterthought, but it doesn't connect to like the main title, or maybe there's like a bit of explanation that can just guide me a little bit into like what this is and why I should care. But yeah, other than that, very nice piece, Emmanuel. I know that you're on the call. This is well done. Okay, so I am going to go into the next visualization here, also by Emmanuel. Okay. And this is titled Personal Spotify Dashboard. I'm very curious about this actually. I do love Spotify. All right, it's taking a bit of time to load up. Okay. So what am I looking at here? This looks like a classic Spotify desktop view. And there's some metrics here. So listening time, tracks played. Oh, this is 456 hours. I feel like it's easier for me to process 456 hours in days because like 456 hours is like, I don't know, like 20 days, less than 20 days. But I feel like the number of days is probably like easier to process. But I also feel like, I think again, this is where the author making decisions can also help. So you could think 456 hours, that's a lot of listening time. Maybe by putting it in days might kind of water down that effect. But I think this is more of a personal choice. I probably will try to see what that looks like in days. Does it deliver as much impact? However, I think this is fine as well. And obviously, this also looks like a visualization of a personal data. So this person is Emmanuel is here is visualizing his personal Spotify data, I imagine. Which in that case, if there are spikes or like dips in like for example, there's like a dip in November, that then happens all the way through August, since it's a personal data, you probably know why that is, right? And I feel like personal data is the best place to like provide information. So maybe just even in the tooltip and just saying that, oh, like, in November I stopped using Spotify, or like in November, I was watching more, I was reading more instead of like listening more. I think just those like extra little detail can make it feel much more personalized. But again, I know that like this view, the whole essence of it is to kind of recreate that like Spotify UI. But yeah, that's like one thing that I want to add to push the storytelling a bit more. But I think this is clean. Um, Also looks like it's interactive. So if I were to click into these headings, I can see the top tracks. I think it's brilliant. I think this is also like one instance where maybe using like image is forgiving, because sometimes like putting image in your visualization on your dashboard might kind of water it down. But I think again, this is a very like this seems to me like a creative visualization rather than like a business style visualization. So there's some like creative freedom and leeway, and in that case, I feel like it works here. I mean, again, I don't know if there's like licensing in like using these images. I know this is not a commercial visualization, so it's probably fine. But if you like got these images from somewhere, it would be nice to kind of just put the reference there, or like something that shows that okay, you took care in basically copying like or taking people's like album art. That's like one thing that I might want to add. But it looks like there's a lot of interactivity. You can click around. It's a fun one. Um, Let me see. It looks like there's also pagination going on here. Now, I would say the pagination for me was a bit hard to spot. I didn't even quickly realize that this is something I could click on. So maybe if there was like a more obvious way to show that, I might want to, I don't know, there could be like something that shows that you can scroll, which that actually like represents the Spotify UI today. You can actually scroll on the homepage, and I think people are used to like scrolling anyway. So maybe it was like I could scroll within that like layout, that could like help. Maybe to I'm just going to check the chat. Or I can click on the images and the date range above. So I can click on the date range right, and then images. I didn't even realize I could click on the images. But again, I know that like I think this is like taking a bit of time to render, but I would never have thought to click on the image, right? And clearly this is a whole different view and something that I don't want hidden from your audience. So there could be ways that you like, I don't know, maybe like a small tooltip, a small button, a small dot that just gives someone like maybe even like a box shadow that just helps the user a little bit from a UI perspective, that okay, you can actually click and interact into this, right? Because now look at all of the insight that I would have been missing. So here it seems like when you click on a track or you click on something, you get to see like how they listen to it over the years, and like if their top tracks, what their top tracks were, total listening time. Again, I think this is clean. This is a creative visualization. So I think some creative leeway is allowed. I would say though, I'm not a fan of this gray in particular. This is just a personal preference now. I don't know. I feel like maybe just carrying the same. If I to click this X, maybe carrying the same like design guideline through that view as well, either through using this specific like grayish dark background. But again, that's just like a personal thing. Also, I know we are trying to like recreate like that Spotify UI, and I don't think I see gray. And so maybe that's why I'm also like not a fan of the gray. But again, this is fun. fun. I can tell it's a personal project and overall, oh, okay. Clearly there's a lot packed into this. And I think if somebody actually wanted to like take the time to explore this, I think there would be little like tidbits here. But what I would say is like guide the user a little bit more so that like all of the amazing things and all of the like fun visuals are not just hidden behind a screen that they didn't even know that they could click into. But yeah, user persona. I'm really curious how the first question I want to ask if I were using this dashboard is like, okay, how did you come across this like persona? Like passive listener, algorithm is my DJ. Um, where did that data come from? I think that would be something that I'd be curious to know. Like, how did you do this grouping and shuffle, non-shuffle, conscious? Yeah, I don't know how I feel about this section in particular because I'm like, is it telling me something new? Or maybe you can just like personalize it and say, okay, most of the time you listen in shuffle, or like 50% of the time you listen in shuffle, something like that. But I feel like this part is disconnecting away from me from the main story. Or maybe it's just because like I'm not really in an exploration mood. Obviously, I'm trying to quickly review these vids, and there's clearly so much more that I can click into here. But honestly, really well done. I think this is like clean, nice layout, usage of layout. I'm wondering though if this is a bug. It feels like so we have like this like the grid line, so like the border line, and I'm not sure if this aggregate month is meant to connect to the chart above it. So maybe that's just like a little design thing that you might want to fix. But overall, well done. This is clearly fun exploratory one. Okay. I am going to move on to the next viz of the day. Let me just look at the chat here. Oh, there's a user guide at the top. Well, nice. I probably didn't catch that, but again, well done. Okay, next viz. This viz crash reporting question. So actually, this viz was sent to us on Slack, and the author also sent it with like a Notion page, just like providing like details about the viz. Clearly, they wanted it to be like exploratory, so they're asking like a clear question and trying to do some analysis on like the answer. Yeah, and I think that is cool. Now, I feel like the very first thing that I have is like there's a text hierarchy when you are visualizing something. And in the sense of hierarchy, I would want that question to be that much bigger. Like, give me a clear, bold title, give me a clear, bold question that we're trying to answer. Right now, it feels like it's competing with all of the like text on the dashboard. Now, also, the second thing I would say is like it feels to me like I'm not sure exactly where to look. There's no clear like borders around the chart to just like section the dashboard a little bit more. So everything kind of just feels like one dimensional, like one view. I think one thing that will really make this powerful is just imagine having just like borders and like sectioning the chart. That already visually helps me to know, okay, this is one insight I'm trying to look at, this is the next insight, and this is the final insight. So that's kind of like the first thing that is standing out to me. And then in that case, you can then remove like the very contrasting lines that can be distracting. For example, like this axis line maybe doesn't need to be there. Same thing with like this line. This is not even an axis line. I don't know if it's trying to like act as a divider here, but then you can actually play around with like, the layout and sectioning things. Another thing, so here the severe crashes occur disproportionately in head-on collisions when driver impairment or poor lighting conditions are present. Head-on collision, severe crash rate, low light condition. So I am seeing the question. I'm not sure the answer is clear to me, right? So the question is almost like a relational question. So you want to compare like head-on collisions with poor lighting condition, right? So you want to compare driver impairment with poor lighting conditions. But let me see that comparison clearly, like maybe like a scatter plot. I don't even know where to look at here. So I think I'm struggling a bit. I understand that what the author is trying to do, and it's a clear flow, is like, okay, first we start with like head-on collision and we are looking at the crash rate. And then now we look at the low light conditions and then we go into substance abuse. But I feel like maybe there's a way to connect all of these dots and that way, all of these dots, and that way you actually go from putting charts on a dashboard to communicating insights and telling a clear story. And yeah, I think that's something I would say. In terms of like design wise, I would also want to add like extra padding around the dashboards in general because things kind of feel squished to the edge. So kind of just bringing a bit more padding and playing around with white space. I think actually in general, white space will help this dashboard to zone the questions or the answers or the charts on this dashboard and give it a bit of room to breathe and actually help people want to explore what this is saying. But right now, all of the text seem to be like similar fonts. Everything kind of is in the same one layout, so it makes it hard really to kind of follow through and understand what is going on. But I would say that this is a like good attempt. I feel like this. Some people do send us like assignments to review. I don't know if this is an assignment, but I'm not sure. Again, if this is a new Tableau user, I would say like still like good attempt in general. I love a classic bar chart. Like bar charts are very effective in just seeing the clear difference of something. But I just wish like all the charts would connect a bit more and tell like a more um harmonious story, if you will. So I think that's like my main feedback here. And then I think what they also did was so they had the same data set, I imagine, but then trying to have two different questions. Now, I'm not going to go into this deeply because I think most of my feedback from the other carries through here. But what I would say is that, like, instead of having two different dashboards, could these two questions actually be told in one consistent story in one view? That's something to think about. But in general, I think there's also a very harsh contrast between the dark background and the like white, which makes the ink to data ratio kind of feel a bit more stark. So maybe just using like a softer background, also because of the red as well, is really like everything is kind of like very high contrast and it's just not, I think design wise, I'll probably want to use like maybe a softer background or maybe like even a white background, um, and see how that looks like. But yeah, I think good attempt. But again, all the things I said about the text, about the layout, about the white space also still follow here. All right. I'm going to move on to the next visualization. I'm just checking if there's anything in the chat. Okay, cool. Nothing. Now, this V's flight passenger data visualization analysis. Okay, I think this might be an assignment because last time we reviewed a flight passenger V's, which might be the same data set. And so just, I guess, putting that context out there that this user might be relatively new to using Tableau or to like, data visualization in general. Now, seasonal flight activity pattern across continents. I I think this I would make the title much clear. I don't mind that. Like, I do like the use of heat map. I think this is a good use of heat map in the sense of like you can instantly see that North America clearly have a bit more flights. But then I'm actually not sure if this is showing the total number of flights because it says count of passenger ID. So am I looking at total number of flights? Am I looking at total number of passengers? Am I looking at something else? I think I would want to make that clear. So maybe seasonal flight activity, maybe a subtitle that just explains exactly what this is, or maybe even just directly in the title, how many passengers are flying from, across different continents. I think that immediately lets the audience know, okay, I'm looking at total number of users. So I think maybe just making that clear will make it obvious. So yeah, I was going to say if this is count of passenger ID, you can instantly see that North America dominates compared to like other continents, which then makes me feel like could there be a normalization here from an analysis point of view? North America clearly has like higher absolute numbers, but maybe the thing that will actually make North America comparable to the different continents is by looking at the percentage difference in the number of passengers across the months. So that way I'm not, the baseline is the baseline, which I can also still show in a different capacity, but I'm saying okay, actually, month over month, Asia is growing faster than Africa, and then I can start to like review a bit more of those like insights. But right now, I think the overall insight is like North America obviously has a lot more like passengers, but then the question is why, how is this like actionable for me, right? So I think those are like the extra things that I might want to extra steps that I might want to take from an analysis point of view. Design wise, I would say that again, maybe the title can be centralized since this subtitle that shows the month is also like centralized. Also, maybe we don't even need to say month of departure date because we are, this is obviously month and year. And if this is 2022, maybe I don't need to repeat 2022 all the way through. I can just put in the title, flight activity in 2022, and then I can just keep like the actual months here. So again, there are like little things there. These are the little design decisions that you make that actually take your visualization from like, 1 to 1.1. And so I think those just like those little things are stuff that I won't think about. But yeah, I think, good effort or good attempt. There seems to be another view here, global flight passenger distribution. So I imagine this is showing like again the total passengers by the airports, no, by the continent. I think I understand trying to like visualize this on the map, but considering that there's a lot of like empty countries on this map, I'm wondering if this map view is ideal for this chart, right? Maybe a bar chart could have been okay. Um, yeah, I think that's something to think about because right now it's just like I see some dots, but most of the map is blank. So playing around with all that visualization chart styles and seeing what that looks like and what delivers the insights the quickest, I would recommend. So for example, I can't tell if this bubble is bigger than this bubble. I can't really like compare the difference until I over on top of it and then I am and which then like takes me more time to get to my insights. So I want to play around with those kind of things. Another question that is coming to my mind is how many do all are we looking at the same number of like airports in each continent? Like how are we thinking about the fact that like one continent might have like 20 airports and another continent might have like five? Those types of things I might want to surface in one way or the other to just enrich the insights and enrich the analysis and the dashboard. But yeah, good first attempt. Okay, I will try to see if I can squeeze in the last two in the short time that we have. So let's look at this. Okay, so this viz here is titled How Urban Density and Green Space Coexist in Tokyo. I like the title. I think it's clear. Can it be bigger and bolder and just more, centralized? Probably. But let me look at it. Let me look into the chart now. So spatial and temporal analysis. So we are looking at total green area over time. Hmm. I think if we are saying over time, I want to see a growth, like something that looks like a growth. I'm not thinking over time, I'm thinking a bar chart because sorry, the map, because with the map I can only see one instance of time, right? So here it shows me 2016. It doesn't really tell me over time, but if I scroll down here, it looks like there's some growth metrics here, but I don't know what the comparison is, right? So is it just how it's grown within 2026? Is it compared to a different year, a different month? I might want to put that in the title and the subtitle. Um, yeah, I think that's something that I might want to do because over time, I'm not sure I can really see over time here. And if this is the actual yeah, I don't I don't exactly know what I'm looking at. So I think just making it clearer. And if you're looking at over time, maybe some trend like a line charts might even be more ideal. Or if you were to keep the growth rate, something that just shows that growth rate visibly. Excuse me. Okay. And then in this section here, green space versus urban density. So yeah, we are comparing two different metrics. I like that, scatter plot is great for like obviously looking at relationship between two metrics. Um, but I'm not sure. Right. So it looks like generally green area percentage is lower, but then density is higher. But I don't think I can say, okay, there's a relationship between green area and like volume. How can I make that a bit more clear? Do I want to show a trend line? Do I want to show something that just kind of makes that relationship a bit clearer? I think I would want to either provide that as an explanation, and maybe there's something here that I need to be reading, or make it more clear. Oh, and then there's some. I think this is interesting. I feel like there might be an issue with, not an issue, but I wonder how come all the subtitle and the filters are in the middle of the visual of the dashboard, and then it just applies to the right side of the dashboard, whereas the left side of this dashboard is just kind of doing its own thing. I think there could be more thoughts in cohesiveness of the insight and the storytelling. And overall, I would probably lay out this a bit more differently. Yeah, I think I'll probably want to use like colors, maybe background colors and like borders to kind of section the vase. So here, maybe I'm looking at the overall green area, and then maybe to the right, I'm looking at the evolution in Tokyo specifically. But then I can use color and I can use design to make that distinction clear so that the user or the audience of this dashboard is able to actually follow the story. So maybe just like, for example, having like a background here and just giving this section its own title and maybe the overall insight, and also doing the same thing for here. That might help with this visualization a little bit. I see some interactivity here where I think you can click into this to see the like history over time. I don't really like this legend because it's not, it doesn't tell me much, right? It doesn't really tell me much. Or maybe the legend itself can be closer to the chart. Actually, a great tip here might be even to like have like categories. So maybe you have 2,000 to 5,000, 5,000 to 10,000, 10,000 to 50,000, and then you color this like circles by that, category. So that way, once I see something that is like purple, I know instantly, okay, it falls in this bin or in this like particular range. I think those little things that like just help people get the insight quicker, and don't have to make them to think, oh, okay, this bubble, how do I like what do I match this 50 million bubble to? Is it Shibuya? Is it, I think just those like little things, I think might help to like improve this visualization. Here I'm looking at green building over time, green buildings over time by word. Um, right. Also, like by word is not very obvious. It just looks like we are using the same kind of purple that to show different words. But how does that like how do I, for example, if I wanted to compare um Minato to show, how do I actually do that just by looking at this visualization without having to like over on top of each like year and on top of each bar? So in this case, maybe using like a line chart, but then you have different lines for different words might actually help us to see the trends. And then we can start to compare how did one particular word grow, how did that growth change over, the second word, right? And then you can now start to like reveal insight. So I think that's something I might want to think about. I think overall, I would reconsider a lot of chat types that have been used here. I'll reconsider this chat type. I'll reconsider this map if the aim is to show the growth over time. But if the aim is just to show overall green area, I mean, this actually works to show the overall green area because I can instantly see that this place is like relatively more green, and looks like that is Edogawa, but I think just like little things like this will help to improve this visualization. And I see that there's also another like page here, kind of looks similar. I mean, this is clearly packed with a lot of information. Um, I think kind of looks similar. This color categorization works better for me because if I see the blue, I can see, okay, dense and green, dense and low green. So this is kind of what I was suggesting for the other scatter plot, but then based on the actual values, rather than me having to just like actually look at the circle and trying to like match it to something. But I don't know. I feel like there's so much information on this visualization, and it will help to just section it a little bit more, try to consider the layout, try to make sure like your titles maybe have a little subtitle to explain what I'm looking at, to explain the metric I'm looking at, and also clean it up a little bit. So for example, you see this like three dots that just show that like I have to over on top of it to read, okay, this is flood relief, this is ground coverage. I feel like these are things that can be solved design wise. Maybe make this wider, or just reconsider how you're thinking about this so that users can really understand what is going on without having to do a little bit more work. And yeah, I think overall, I think the idea is there. The idea for the analysis is there, but I would definitely try to clean this up a bit more and yeah, reconsider chat choices. All right. I think that I'll end it here actually. I don't think we have time for the last one. So let me stop sharing. And yeah, what I'm going to say is thank you so much for joining. Thanks to everyone that joined. And this video is going to be up on YouTube soon, I think in a week from now. But yeah, thank you all for joining and see you again in 2 weeks.